It might be 17 years since Farscape last made its mark on the world of sci-fi television, but there really has been nothing like it since, and I am going to talk about one particularly enthralling element of this explosive and super imaginative space opera, and that is the show's central villain, Scorpius. Scorpius is a strange looking fella, played by Australian actor Wayne Pygram. Also famed for his fleeting role as Moff Tarkin at the end of Revenge of the Sith, this guest villain at the end of the first series of Farscape made such an impression that he quickly became a regular, who was swiftly entrenched in the entire mythology of the show. He is absolutely one of the coolest characters in a sci-fi TV series, and certainly one of the best villains. Here's why. I'm about to go real deep into the story of Scorpius and his impact in the world of Farscape. If you're looking to binge on this series for the first time, and you should, you might want to click away now. So what makes me such an expert on Farscape? This does. Marvellous. Anyway, viewers learned swiftly early on that the Peacekeeper chain of command went a lot higher than that of vengeful Krace, who would quickly defect toward a kind of supportive anti-hero role. Above him in the Peacekeeper ranks was Scorpius, a half Sebacean, half Scarran hybrid with a desire for results that outworked everyone else. Scorpius was driven, he was ruthless, he was diplomatic, and he was working on something a little bit secret. Cue his obsession with central protagonist and all-round good man John Crichton. You see, during his exploits across the Uncharted Territories, a gift was bestowed upon the unwitting Crichton. He didn't ask for it, but he received it all the same, and that gift was the secret to wormhole travel. Once Scorpius, the Peacekeeper commander with a troubled past, caught wind of it, he made it his undying quest to unearth the wormhole technology from John Crichton's brain and use it as a weaponized tactical advantage for the Peacekeeper agenda, an agenda aligned with Scorpius's own desire to wipe out the entire Scarran race. Naturally, John Crichton is the good guy, and this isn't Game of Thrones, and so he escaped from Scorpius's oily clutches, and that was that. Or so he thought. You see, it wasn't enough for Scorpius just to hunt him down and hack his brain open. He had to take more intrusive and slightly perverse routes towards extracting information. Yeah, he is a bit weird like that. Whilst John Crichton was in his captivity first time around, Scorpius implanted John with a neural clone of himself, a digital mini-Scorpius, hiding inside Crichton's mind in a slow bid to dig out the wormhole information and report back to HQ. One of my favourite Scorpius geek-out moments, and one of the many little subtle touches that made Farscape that little bit smarter than its peers, was during the episode Liars, Guns and Money Part 1, where Crichton, mentally incapacitated by the neural clone, and Scorpius, on course to zonking out after being spiked with a defective coolant rod which he needs to survive, have a rather messy standoff. This results in Crichton clambering away in a desperate battle against his own muscles, whilst blurting out the American national anthem. You remember that scene? Well then, you may also have picked up on the detail that during Scorpius' shocking return at the closing scene of Season 2 finale, Die Me Dick to Me, Scorpius is ever so subtly humming the very same anthem. To himself. And there's only one place he could have heard it. Is Scorpius starting to like Crichton's style? I love that show. Having been driven to all forms of insanity by this Scorpius neural footprint, John Crichton eventually won the battle for his own mind, putting the Scorpion in his brain under duress, changing his name to Harvey, and utilising him as a kind of comedy sidekick, whose advice he would call upon when needed. Scorpius's plan had failed, and great acting and clever writing swiftly enabled Harvey to be a new and wholly different character unto himself. Farscape was really good at doing stuff like that. Anyway, back to the genuine article. As the show progressed, that simple observance of Scorpius being a mere villain became ever more jaded. The regular insertions of coolant rods into his head showed a sign of vulnerability, a literal hot versus cold thing going on right in his head. His ability to use tact when required showed amiability, and the fact that he would continue his cause no matter what level of unpleasantries he endured showed a level of patience and tenacity more attributed to, well, a good guy. Okay guys, you got me. This video is complete false advertising. You see, Scorpius isn't really a villain. Antagonistic, yes. But villainous? No. Well, not really. It's complicated. You see, it was in Series 3 that viewers really got into the bone, brain and guts of this character, including an insight into his tormented upbringing, the horrific crime that led to his birth, and the monstrous Scarran mother figure who raised him as a soldier. It's no wonder he hated these people, but if nothing else, it bestowed upon him a fortitude that would act revenge on those who did him wrong, and allowed him to rise in the military ranks with a swiftness unattainable in lesser mortals. Turns out Scorpius didn't want to just destroy the Scarrans, he wanted to destroy the Scarrans, thus saving the galaxy. And this leads to the most dangerous and misguided character trait of them all: obsession. The more Scorpius learns about wormhole technology, the more he begins to bask in its glory, dedicating an entire command carrier to its research. He begins to view Crichton less as an opponent and more of an ally, offering him hospitality and freedom. His threats subside to negotiation. When Crichton is supposedly complicit, Scorpius shows a true level of endearment and wonderment when exposed to the science of wormholes. One might call it happy. We gather the sense that if it wasn't for his brutal militant default setting, he might have turned out to be a good person. For my money, the absolute best arc of Scorpius' character is found in the penultimate episode of Series 3, where John Crichton literally blows up all of his wormhole research and puts him right back to square one. Cue Scorpius' insatiable thirst for revenge. Nope. No, he does no such thing. Instead, he strolls idly through his exploding ship in a philosophical sulk, before finally confronting the man who openly thwarted his plans. Having seen Scorpius' animalistic side on a number of occasions, it was remarkable to see him give John Crichton nothing more than a mild verbal scolding for supposedly bringing about the destruction of the galaxy, before setting his opponent free to escape and, in a final concession of defeat, saying goodbye. Consider this a kind of end-of-game boss fight between John Crichton and Scorpius, except there's no fighting, only talking and a profound sense of understanding and borderline respect between protagonist and antagonist. It remains one of the coolest scenes in science fiction of all time ever. Well, I think it does. As Farscape soldiered on towards the show's unwitting demise, Scorpius was no longer the central threat. There were bigger things happening now. Scorpius was banished from the Peacekeepers and he became a perturbed, slightly sarcastic ally. And that thing with the leash, well, I don't know. Kind of rather not think about that. Anyway, all dimensions of this character were now on display. Scorpius was and always had been a soldier in a war, as desperate and frightened as any other character, and striving towards that sacrosanct goal of peace. Notwithstanding everything achieved in the previous 4 seasons of Farscape, everything you need to know about Scorpi's personality is summarised in the closing act of Farscape Peacekeeper Wars. His cold lack of concern over John Crichton's supposed death, and his giddy look of excitement when the feuding factions of Scarran and Peacekeeper finally broke a peace. Scorpius really is a game of two halves. A smart, complex, formidable and undeniably lovable character who remoulded what it was to be a science fiction antagonist. He is just one of the many excellent characters etched in the Sci-Fi Hall of Fame who, well, put it this way, if they made more Farscape, I'd be a happy man, and I'll leave it at that.